So when you see all of this ugliness, the tendency is to think like people are like humanity is diseased.
And that may be, but it doesn't have to be judged, and it doesn't have to be like the terminal conclusion of the story.
Right, and it doesn't have to be labeled as human nature.
Yeah, please no.
This is the podcast to restore your faith in humanity. Once giraffe heroes, we now call our participants guardians of humanity. Courageous, tireless workers for the common good. May each of them inspire you to follow in their tracks and contribute your own part to a just society and a healthy environment. The music you are hearing is played by Serena, Engel and Jared Rust and was recorded here in my own house. Together they formed TheStringBeanParty. When the concert was finished and the people had left, Serena, Jared and I had a talk about music, but more important, a talk about guarding humanity. For Jared and Serena are not only musicians who sing, play the cello, the guitar, the ukulele, the square neck resonator guitar and a diverse assortment of foot percussion, they are also live artists. Live with a V and live with an F.
God spoke to Moses, face to face, God to man. In a human tongue, using words display.
Jared's roots are in the USA, Serena hails from Australia, but the two live happily in Algäu, Germany, where they run a small farm that has been in operation since 2017. The harvest, mainly fresh vegetables, is given away to anyone who comes to the farm. My very first question to them was, Serena, Jared, who are you?
That's a difficult question, isn't it?
That's sort of like the meaning of life. Figure out who you are, and then
tell me right away.
and then do it. Well, oftentimes the answer just comes with something that you've been doing since you were a kid, and you say your name, which is of course just what your parents decided to call you and what everybody else calls you, which in my case would be Jared. And what about you?
People call me Serena, among other things.
And we're just a couple of people doing our thing. We are living in southern Germany right now. That's been since 2015. Before that, we were in Taiwan for a few years, which is where we met. And before that, I was born and growing up in the US. And you?
I was born and grew up to a certain extent in the countryside by Sydney, Australia.
The question of identity is always a tricky one.
And a big one.
In general. I mean, and it might be a thing that a lot of people maybe don't think about that much, but I think we think about it a lot. Including down to the question of like, what's your name?
and what is it that you are pronouncing yourself to be identical to? And is that true?
With the phrase, I am, fill in the blank.
And that's why, and now I'm already jumping into the music that you are making and the songs that you are writing. So there was this one song about Moses. Moses asks God's name and God doesn't want to give a name, he gives this name, I am that I am.
I think for me it starts with a feeling. Like when someone asks me my name, there's something resistant within me to say I am and then this name that people call me. And so that, I think a lot of these feelings of resistance that show up in certain places, they draw attention to whatever it is that's wanting to be looked at.
Mm.
So in this case, it's that. But like just now, you asked us to introduce ourselves, and we were like,
Like, except it's definitely taken to a new level of difficulty when the question is, who are you?
Yeah, right.
It's not like, tell me about
what you do.
or where you come from, or where
Where
you were
you've been.
born, where you grew up, where you've lived. It's like, who are you?
That's a
Yeah.
serious question.
It's just like the question, how are you, which is used always as like a greeting. How are you? I'm okay. Or, I'm good. Someone says, how are you? To me, I'm like, let's have a seat.
Yeah, but if I Google the two of you, you are Jared and Serena from the TheStringBeanParty.
String.
TheStringBeanParty.
But spring bean is also something
Spring
to
bean?
consider.
Because it is spring now.
Yeah, it is.
And
spring.
actually, you're not wrong, because the original name is in Mandarin, and it's actually the 四季豆党, which is the 4-season bean. So the spring bean is one.
Spring is one of the four.
Yeah. But the fact that you quote the Mandarin language is already part of your identity too, because if I Google you, one of the things that I immediately read is that you, Serena, you are from Australia, and you, Jared, you're an American, you're from North America, but you met in Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, the way that it played out was that we both were scheduled to perform with our respective bands at a music festival that was a yearly event in the mountains,
Of Hsinchu.
which is
It
A
is
small
called
city.
New Bamboo.
a small city outside in the city's in Taiwan, but the festivals is in the countryside outside of the city. And the bass player in the band that I was playing with knew Serena and made the suggestion that maybe she might want to sing a couple of songs with us, and sent me her contact info so that I could ask her if she would want to do that. So we arranged some things over messaging, and then actually met the night of
The shindig.
the night of the event, and a couple hours later we were singing on stage together.
Did you immediately fall in love?
Do you want an honest answer?
I kind of did.
I think you definitely did.
Yeah, took her a while. But what definitely,
I liked him, but I was like, whoa.
he's crazy. What
Gotta
definitely
be careful with this one.
what definitely immediately happened was that musically,
We had rapport.
it just worked from the first second. Like on the stage, things were like, we did this like improvised banter, and it was really funny, and it just happened like without any kind of planning, and it worked really well. That definitely happened immediately.
And then the audience sensed that and immediately gave that back to you, like you felt like you had to continue.
I don't even remember what
No,
the
he was
audience
just in
was
love
all
then.
about. Yeah, I don't know. We
You
definitely.
were like, whoa, this chick's awesome. And I was like, whoa, I shouldn't have eaten that pot cookie that I just had.
I didn't eat one. For the record. Yeah, no, it definitely, once we, because soon thereafter we started, because that was with a bigger band, right? And soon thereafter we started working on like a duo repertoire. And when we started performing as a duo, it was clear from the very beginning that it worked really well and that it was received really well by people.
It wasn't necessarily very comfortable, but the way that we work musically as a team is more like Jared is a driver and he has a really good eye on the things that I need to be working on. And I don't like people telling me what to do. So it's like, it was a massive challenge to lass myself ein, was that in English?
Allow myself.
To let yourself be taught.
Yes, totally. And disciplined to a certain extent, because a lot of the time I just wasn't really interested in putting the level of focus and concentration in that it needed to get things to actually be nice.
And actually at first she was like, you know, it was like, surprise, I play cello, because that first band, she was just singing in that band and she sang with us, and then she's like, oh, I play cello and we can maybe like do this duo thing. And then she'd be like, oh, but for this song I'll actually not play cello, I'll just sing. I'm like, no way. Of course you're gonna play cello. You're gonna play cello on all the songs. Why would you ever not play?
Yeah, but it was interesting because like at first, you know, I didn't know how to play and sing at the same time. And so if you're playing a fretless instrument and you're singing, obviously singing a fretless instrument, you have to have an ear on both things. And if one is the bass, which is obviously a completely different register to some high vocal
Lady's voice.
right, it's quite a challenge, and also rhythmically to figure out how to do those things at the same time and do them that they don't sound like crap, either of them. And so Jared, I guess, believed that I could do that, even though I didn't believe that. And kind of just very nicely pushed me to figure it out.
Well, he must have, because on a technical level, you score super high, the two of you. If you say that he disciplined you, well, then somehow you let yourself be disciplined, because it's really amazing what you do on a technical level. You do realize that.
I mean, I guess we just have to believe you when you say that.
Yeah, I think sometimes I notice that we have really improved.
Okay, but that is on a technical level. But there is, in the music that you play, there is a very clear message coming out. I could try to describe it. It's something that is very close to Mother Nature, very close to acceptance, very close to trying to be a respectful being. But I rather ask you, what is this message that you are trying to give?
I don't necessarily ever really think about it as a message trying to give. It's just like the stuff that we
We're
like
trying to
think about or like talk
learn
about, or
ourselves as well.
yeah, it's like the things that we think are important and are like themes of conversation that are constantly running.
If it is a message, we're trying to give ourselves the memo as well. It's also the same with the garden. So it seems like everything that we do that's perceived from the outside world as like what we're putting out, we're also like putting it into us. Like we're You know, that's where we're at with these things and what we're asking ourselves and searching for.
But they always say the best way to learn something is to teach it.
Right.
Right?
But I think a lot of the time when people look at what we're doing, they kind of imagine somehow that we've like gone through a process and are at the end of it and are now like presenting, you know, whatever it is that we've learned or whatever.
And actually it isn't.
Well, we're right in the middle of everything,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Just the same as everybody else.
It's also like the thing I realized at some point, like in my 20s, like, gosh, I keep having these really big, profound realizations, and then I just forget. And then I'll like remember them again, like, who knows, like the next day or like a week later or like a year later or like
Or
5
like
years
10
later,
right.
and be like, I already thought of this before and I haven't been doing it or haven't been living it this whole time. So it's kind of like just like repeat, and then it kind of maybe eventually starts to become not only just a intellectual idea, but something that like you start to maybe feel a bit, and then maybe you start to actually like act it and start to like be it and start to live it, like
But essentially,
slowly.
it does feel just like remembering
Right. Yeah.
at the end and the beginning of the day.
Like remember who you are.
Yeah.
And what we're here to do, which I guess is like bringing a circle back to the Guardians of Humanity question. I like the new title, by the way. It resonates a lot more than Giraffe Heroes, I guess, because Giraffe Heroes is more like a conceptually interesting, and Guardians of Humanity is like totally clear. Like it's just like, yes, of course, you know, we're Guardians of Humanity, and the humanity are essentially the guardians and custodians of the earth, and that's what we're here doing, and we are also allowed to remember that.
Yes, because the main theme nowadays is that humanity is messing up the planet. So we are bad guardians. We are not guardians. We are fucking it up.
We're just teenagers at the moment.
Yeah. I
That's-
mean,
yeah.
it's tricky because there's a super fine line, because in one sense it's true that we're messing a lot of things up, but the part that might be getting I'm using careful language here, that might be sometimes exploited into a bit of an untruth, is that we are incapable of getting it right. Like
Yes.
we might be
And
getting it
we are-
wrong in a lot of ways, but it's not that we are incapable of getting it right.
And it's not that we're implicitly trashy cancers of the earth, which is, I feel like, probably, if there's any message that I would like to give anyone at all in this moment, would be something that I've kind of developed a sense for and then learned a couple of things about, which implies exactly the opposite of that idea, that human beings, through existing, can only cause piles of garbage. I'm going to pull out a statistic because I can. In the middle of the 1800s, the biodiversity in Middle Europe was at its absolute high point. From the entire time before that in recorded history. So obviously the monks were kartieren and writing down all the things that they found. And starting with the Industrial Revolution, that was the beginning of the decline of biodiversity. So all the time up until that point, from where Middle Europe was just beech, boegen.
Beech. Yeah.
Beach forest.
Right. Up until the Industrial Revolution, through the way that human beings had cultivated and worked with the land, an immense level of biodiversity was created through that, co-created with the human being's relationship to the land and everything on and in and around it. And that's a really important thing for us to know.
That the messing up is so young.
Yeah, not only that the messing up is young, but that we actually not just can be, but already in not that far ago history, we're actively participating, and we even as Europeans
contributing to the biodiversity, like in the biggest possible way, because beech forest, that's one thing, but then if you think about everything that happened since then, not just through the development of the specific cultures that were cultivated, but the supporting ecosystems around those cultures. For example, that there were then through the cultivating of grasslands or fields, that any earthbound birds, for example, could then live in Middle Europe, which was not the case previously. Or it's difficult for me, I just know the German words of these things, like the hempfinch, or Schwalbenschwanz, or all of these moths or bees or birds that did not previously exist in that place.
Yeah, but maybe this is a good time just to let our listeners understand why an Australian and an American who have met in Taiwan
are struggling
with English and have all these German words coming into their place. So please tell us, you live in Germany now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do you live in Germany, but you run a farm there.
Yeah.
And
well, that's obviously the reason, because when we're thinking or talking about the things that are specific to the place where we're doing the language is German. So I wouldn't necessarily have ever thought of what a hemp finch would be called in English.
Mm.
Because we don't call it a hemp finch.
No.
We call it a hanfink.
yes. But when you sing, okay, there's the music, there's the melody, there is the humor, of course, that you do so well. But when I speak about the message in the music, there is one song that you sang, Serena, is about your relationship to plants. You tried to explain what it was, this to crawl with your feet, with your knees on the ground and struggling with plants. This is obviously about Bowden, no?
It's actually more like struggling with the weather. Yeah. The weather is a little bit like the
wild
card in the whole equation. And if you're gardening or farming in any kind of way, at least I have a very intimate feeling relationship with the garden. And so whatever the weather is doing, it doesn't actually matter if I'm there or if I'm inside or somewhere else. If the garden is experiencing a certain weather, then I also am experiencing that weather. So if it's hail, then it hurts. And if it's drought, then it's really stressful. And it's not stressful for a minute when I think about it. I just feel kind of the constant stress of it.
And have you always had that?
Oh, no, not at all. that definitely was something that developed itself and has been developing, and I think it will continue to evolve, because I don't find that state of being to necessarily be the end goal. I think the end goal essentially is a compassionate state of being instead of a sympathetic or an empathetic or even a completely ignorant. Obviously there are different ways of of being in a relationship to what's around you and what's before you. And I hope essentially to get to the point where I can feel what the garden is feeling or what the plants are feeling or the people around me, without allowing it to affect my sense of center and well-being.
There is a documentary about you and about the music and about the farm. From watching that documentary, I sense that it's mainly Serena who is plowing and harvesting and also sowing, and that you, Jared, mostly play music. Is that correct?
Well, it's definitely the case that I am not really working in the garden.
And that you're mostly doing the work on the music, but you're not mostly playing music, except for now we've got a bit of a different thing going on.
Right. But I've got, like, I guess you would say, two big loves when it comes to things that I want to be doing. One of them would be, of course, with the music, whether that be arranging and composing and writing or just practicing or playing or whatever. And the other one is building stuff. So like the house that we are living in, we've done a lot of work on, like a lot of transformation, and I definitely have not done that all by myself, that's for sure, because Serena's also done a lot, but Serena does it in the winter, and I might be working on the house like all year round. And I love mostly working with wood. I just love it.
You have that same sensitivity with wood as Serena has with the land?
I think so.
I think so. And I think that's also one deciding factor if anyone can stand to live with us in the same house, is whether or not they are willing to be sensitive enough with the wood to the extent that we require it. The wooden things in the house.
But yeah, and it's, I think for me, it's the sensitivity isn't just in like with the wood and working with the wood, but in the space. So like when there's, and it just so happens that my medium is the wood. So like when...
Oh, the wood is everywhere, that's the thing though.
Because my medium is the wood.
Right.
So like when it was time to renovate the room that was going to become our bedroom, that process of feeling into a space and like the angles and the shapes and the solutions to like questions of doors and windows and trim around the door frames and around the ceiling and whatever, like all of those feeling elements in a space is a place where I might be more sensitive than I am in other areas of my life.
Yeah.
But that's interesting now, just listening to you talk about that, it does feel like you do inside what I do outside. So like when we go into that water closet and I put my hand on the handle of the door, which is this beautiful bent stick, I feel love and gratitude just automatically. I don't have to do anything for it because it's coming towards me, you know. It is sort of, for me, it feels important that there be spaces where we can just absorb loveliness and have that begin or continue a positive feedback loop in us, that we can have also the strength to take up the task that we're here to do.
And this idea actually makes me think of exactly what you brought up several minutes ago about this idea of like humanity just like messing things up. And it's another observation that this is our judgment anyways, when we look around, say, a modern city, we think, oh my gosh, look at all this ugly stuff that people are making. Like, and Serena's always asking the question when we're driving through cities, like, where are people getting their inspiration from? Like, haven't they looked at nature before? like
Yeah,
nature is just full of beauty, and then these cities are just full of ugliness.
Yeah, not just beauty, but like beauty in an incredibly cooperative and intrinsically supportive context, which it kind of just has it all. You know, what's not there to be inspired by? Like, come on, guys.
So when you see all of this ugliness, the tendency is to think like people are like humanity is diseased.
And that may be, but it doesn't have to be judged, and it doesn't have to be like the terminal conclusion of the story.
Right, and it doesn't have to be labeled as human nature.
Yeah, please no.
That's the one that takes it over the edge.
Yeah.
Like being sick is not the same as being yourself.
It's
and
not
human nature sounds like that's what we are, and like a human disease sounds like something that can be healed.
But this brings me to the songs that you write, Jared. A song like You Made It Up, or the other song like the Optimist Blues, where you say,
you can call me an optimist, but that's not what I am. It's just what I choose.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
and also a song like You Made It Up is like, okay, you look at reality and you create it. There is also a song about authorization, to authorize something. And you said, Serena, we mean it very literally, like authorship. It's also in
exactly.
So you claim reality, it's yours. But you can bend it, you can change it, and if you say it's not human nature to be bad, to be
the no good, lonely, loveless, land grabbing money grubbers.
Yes, to become someone like that, it's not human nature.
Right.
It takes a lot of perversity to get you there.
Yeah.
And a lot of bad choices.
Right.
Yes.
And a lot of openness to being a host of that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like the story of the two wolves inside you.
Right.
And
Which
who's
one are you
going to
gonna
win?
feed? Yeah.
The wolf that you feed.
Obviously.
Yeah, is the one that's going to win. This is so much part of your music. It's why you are sitting here today and that I'm interviewing you as guardians of humanity and not as musicians. Because there is so much power into that message, and it's one can hear it, but one must search for these messages today. And that's why I feel so blessed with you playing this music in my house today. Do you often hear that people really recognize themselves in your music like I did today?
We hear a lot of very positive feedback about people's experiences of listening to us.
And things moving.
For sure.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, the short answer to your question would be yes.
Yeah.
I guess we believe it when people tell us these things, but at the same time, it is, I would say, pretty much every time surprising and surprisingly nice to get that kind of feedback, because, you know, we're definitely very much caught up in what's going on inside of us.
Yeah, and also because of the nature of our togetherness, we go around with what we're up to very much in tandem, but as a unit. So we're constantly, all of the time that we spend awake are just bouncing ideas off of one another and in sort of epic conversations that last for years and are very much in our own world with that, with of course a lot of
Friends.
but it's, I guess in the whole picture we're the
constants. Yeah. Yeah. So when especially because most of our performing is happening in Germany, and so we're not singing these songs in front of a native English speaking audience, so
or an audience that necessarily has a level of fitness in English,
right,
that can really follow the text. A lot of it, what the comprehension that happens is either between what we say between songs and the feeling that people get
right
from the sound of the music.
And that's because we don't necessarily always have conversations with people like we do with you, for example, you who understands a lot of the lyrics, and can really get into the depth of it,
and is inclined to get into the depth of it, because there's a lot of different kinds of interest in what we're about. I think a lot of people they maybe even stay on the level of, oh, they're doing something different.
It remains on the level of like feeling.
But isn't that perfect? Because it does feel like, especially in Middle Europe, the feeling world, the soul world,
and especially in Germany,
is a little bit of a wild, mysterious landscape.
Neglected. People
Yes.
are very much on the intellectual level, and it does seem like in that case they might be getting out of their heads for a minute when they come and hear us play.
Yeah. The garden of feelings is a very badly tended garden. Yeah?
But it's interesting because for me, coming and living where we live has been kind of the opposite lesson for me, because I think before I pretty much just only lived in the garden of feelings, and the nog wasn't really getting it, and I feel like being in a place where headspace is so revered and cultivated, it's really done a lot for my capacity to comprehend and articulate what's happening in my feeling landscape, which has been huge for me. Like, it's been like a massive step up on the developmental path.
When our captain spied
You said to me, Serena, that the documentary that was made about you, that is certainly a well-made movie, and that there's a lot of things that you do that are very well told in that or shown in that movie. But you said that you both felt that the essence of what you are doing in the place where you live, that the essence of your being there and doing what you do doesn't really come out in the movie. Can you explain that to me?
Well, it's tricky because I would hesitate to explain it to you, and I might even just instead say that it might be the case that despite the fact that we tend to feel that way, it does anyways seem like the people who are seeing it are getting something
that we might even be missing.
They might be seeing it anyways. We might be looking at it and saying, but somehow it's missing.
But what's missing? What's missing in your eyes? I see two young people, young at heart certainly, who are living in a place that they don't even rent. It was like given to them, like tend this place. And from this gratitude, you work on the land and you sow, you tend, you harvest the crops, and you bring other people, or other people come there to live with you. And it's like a harmonious community. You give away what the land gives to you. You try not to earn money from it, although there is one sequence where you still go to this one person and because this guy has a special relationship to you,
but that's different now.
Yeah,
now
we don't do that.
We don't do that at all since the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
So you have this way of cultivating the land and being as generous as the land is with you. And it's open doors, since any kind-hearted stranger that would want to come there and work with you is welcome to come. That's the idea that I have. So what am I missing there? The music, of course, is also in the movie.
I think a part of it that feels like it's missing for me is like the kind of conversation that we're having right now about like big questions of humanity and the nature of what it is to be human. Like none of that is there.
The film happened kind of a bit without a real plan to it. Paddy would just show up whenever and have his camera, and we'd be doing something, and then he'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "We are doing me," you know. And so I was also kind of hoping for there not to be so much talking in it, but to be more powerful, like what can speak for itself, really. And then I find myself in the film just kind of blabbing about a bunch of stuff that I don't really find important. But then I feel like if I'm saying words, I'd like to be saying something that really has a deep and powerful significance in relation to the questions that I'm walking around with all day, every day.
Right. So the whatever is being spoken should be on this level, like this conversation that we're having right now. But instead, there's like a lot of spoken
chit-chat
word that's about like, oh, like this is like a 25 kilo sack of rolled oats. You know, like.
Okay, we just saw that. So it's in documentaries, it's show don't tell.
Right.
And so that's why you say it would have been stronger if it was just shown and you didn't have to say it.
Right. But I think also the oats are also not important.
No.
I guess for us, but maybe somebody finds it fascinating, the concept that the things that you don't grow, you can just buy them in like a bulk sack and then you know, just have a lot of them instead of a bunch of little packets. Like for us, you know, that's just, it's not something that we even think twice about, but maybe it is interesting for someone. I don't know.
It's just the really big like questions that we carry around and the themes that we are always like just digging deeper and deeper and deeper
And
into,
massaging
like
into.
none of that really comes up.
Maybe
And maybe
little
it's
hints of it.
yeah,
but-
yeah, and some of it or all of it maybe is implied within like what we're doing.
And also certain things that we say. But I feel like something that was interesting about Paddy being the one to make the film is because he's coming from a kind of perspective of like your average Kislegger, for example,
Kisleg is the town where we live,
where Paddy's
and
also
he
from there.
lives there as well.
And so everything that made it into the film, even though we might have said 20 hours of other things, were all things that resonated with him. Because otherwise they wouldn't, if they didn't make sense to him, then they're not coming in the film. And so on one hand, that is then also a really valuable thing because it does make it more of a universal thing. So it is comprehensible then maybe to more people. But I guess, if I were just a spectator in this, I would want to see or hear more
Existential things.
Yeah.
Plus, there's the fact that you just mentioned, like as you were describing the film, about like how we were like selling to these couple of restaurants, and the fact that that's no longer the case makes us feel like it's not even current anymore.
Yes.
Like it really changed
that's just
immediately
one-
afterwards.
Yeah,
And that was like a thing where in the film we're constantly saying, yeah, we're selling a little bit to these couple of restaurants. We really would rather not be doing that. And it's like, oh, actually now we're not, but in the film we still are, and that's what people are seeing. So
But that's what Serena said. It's not the result. It's constantly a process.
yeah,
And we will look at things as results, but it's never. It's always in the making of.
yeah,
It's also an interesting thing to come back to the question of identity and how one identifies. When such a film is made about you, I guess, it does tend to paint a certain kind of picture. On one hand, there is a level of intimacy, of experience that one gets watching the thing. And kind of a whole idea essentially is built out of that in relation to who we are and what we do and what we think and what we feel and what our relationship is like and all of those things. And very often it feels like there are many aspects to my identity, if I dare go there. It's as if they don't exist. And that's a bit hard for me to swallow sometimes.
Are you religious people?
I was raised in an environment that was Protestant, and then I did the completely reject it thing for a minute, and then I spent years doing like a slow reconciliation, all the while basically looking into everything else that there is, and what everyone else has to say about gods and morals and whatever.
My question was mainly, do you have a daily practice? Something that you do every day that brings you closer to this cosmic vibration?
Practice, yes, a practice.
We're a bit out of practice at the moment, actually.
Well, what practice are you referring to? Because the practice that I'm thinking of, and I love the word practice. In this case, I do. When I refer to music, I don't really refer to practice.
Just play.
I talk about playing.
Yeah.
But in this case, practice, because it's, let me put it this way. I would refer to it as a unstructured practice. So it's not like from this time until this time I sit in this position and do this breathing and say this mantra and focus on like this visualization or whatever. For me, it's the practice of, and this brings us back to the being raised in a Christian environment. That reconciliation process brought me to the point where I realized, actually, I love Christ, and actually, I do see now that Christ is within me, and the practice is then building the relationship with Christ within me, and working on practicing a real communication. So listening for the quiet whispers that are within me, practicing recognizing which quiet whispers are coming from where, and which loud screaming from within is coming from where else, and working on practicing always remembering and recognizing and honoring that presence, and then really the goal would be unifying with that presence.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have gone through a similar process, but in a very different way. Because even though my parents, while growing up and still now, they're very much on the path in their own way, they never really had anything specific for my brother and I as far as religion was concerned. And it was more like what they really focused on allowing us to cultivate was a love and reverence for divine being on earth. I guess that's how I would call it now, but it wasn't something that really went over language so much as just a way of being. And then I went through a phase of rebellion and rejection for all things nice, maybe. And had a bit of a wild time, which was great for what it was. And I guess in my practice, similar to Jared but with different language, it is any time where I have space for it. So it ends up being at least once, if not several times a day, where I go into the most tender space of feeling that I can arrive in, and just be in that space and cultivate then this tenderness of feeling to whatever it is that's around me, and fill myself with the love and the gratitude of being that might make it difficult if I was constantly in that state to even just, move my body forwards or backwards or do anything in particular. But for the moments where I allow it to take over, it feels like maybe the most real part of my day.
All I really need is a song in my heart. food in my belly, love in my family. All I really need is a song in my heart, love in my family. All I really need is a song in my heart, food in my belly, love in my family. All I really need is a song in my heart, love in my family. And I need the rain to fall,
And I need the sun to shine,
to give life to the seeds we sow, to get the food we need to grow. All I really need is a song in my heart, food in my belly, love in my family. All I really need is a song in my heart, love in my family.
This was our first podcast, the podcast to restore your faith in humanity. With you were Jared Rust and Serena Engel of TheStringBeanParty. Don't miss our second podcast, which will be with Isabel and Frederic from Geneva, and together we will talk about how it is to be a parent of a kid coping with transgender issues. We hope you have enjoyed the first episode of our podcast. Join us again soon for more inspirational talks.
And